Hey guys, will you turn your mics on? Okay, welcome to the January 16th Water Development Committee meeting. I welcome you all. So we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. First of all, a roll call sheet is being passed around. Please sign it. We'll go over the agenda real quick, what we're going to discuss. Should be a fairly not too complicated night, so we'll try and make good time of this. Again, we'll set a time limit. I think tonight we can set a time limit, a maximum of an hour and a half. Does that sound okay with everyone?
Try.
And we may be done in 40 minutes, so we'll just see where it takes us.
All right.
Starting off.
No, I shouldn't say that. I don't want to get anyone's ruling.
Jinx it right out of the gate.
We've had some long meetings lately, so just I'm trying to be respectful of your time. So first of all, we were going to discuss the remaining time as a committee that we want to spend together, and within that we can talk about some of the things we want to accomplish. And that gets to the next point, figuring out, we've talked about this some, but we can summarize it again tonight quick. What brought us here, what led to this event as far as this committee being formed, and why we're here and what we want to accomplish. So after that, I'd like to get moving on the Water Conservation Committee. We can appoint a head to that committee tonight, or at least make a recommendation. And when we get to that, I will clarify this with the city, but I think that the council has to make that appointment if it's going to be an official committee.
The way I look at it, you've got your committee, as long as you're not bringing any new members in, you can appoint a subcommittee.
We can,
Yeah,
okay.
out of your existing members.
Okay.
About a specific issue.
Okay, all right.
But we can if somebody from outside is. Okay.
If we go through council, can we do that?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to close any doors. I want to leave all possibilities open as far as that goes. And furthermore, like the email that I sent, if there are some folks here that are not here tonight. Pat Deering was one. He said I'd volunteer to be on to head the committee. If there's someone here that wants to be on the committee or wants to head the committee, we can finish that process through emails within a day or two. But I would like to get it accomplished. After that, water tower completion. I'll get to that discussion when we get there. And well 7, further testing like we spoke of last week. And from there, we need to assign a person to write the reviews and 2 people to review that. So with that, let's get started as far as discussing the timeline of our remaining time together, or to be spent together. We first started out saying we'd like to try and keep this around 4, 5, 6 months. Are we still all in agreement of that?
I think it
The
depends
floor
what
is
we're
yours.
doing.
Well, and
I
that's
think 3 and 4 have to kind of.
they kind of go together. Yep.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm getting at. What do you guys? I want to hear your thoughts on what you want to accomplish here as a committee, so that we can figure out how much time we need to block out for the rest of the year. And keep in mind that whatever we decide on, first of all, it can be a revolving door. If that doesn't, if we just can't make it, we're going to do what we need to do, no matter what. But we can at least set a goal. And at that point, if we do accomplish our goals, and we need to visit once or twice a year, we can also do something like that. Again, I want this to come from the committee. I don't want to be forcing my ideas on anyone. So.
Well, I went back to the mission statement.
Okay.
To try to figure out, okay, what all was it that we were trying to do? So I'll just read it to remind everybody: to educate the public and assist Brandon City Council in identifying best practices for affordable and sustainable quality water for the community's short-term and long-term needs. So clearly, every meeting we are educating the public by what it is we're doing by, this is the report, putting out the report. Of course, we're assisting the city council by all of the things that we've been doing. You've been giving the reports and RFPs, all that stuff is moving forward. So then I got to short-term and long-term needs. Clearly, affordable, sustainable, quality all comes with what we're going to do. So my thought process was, okay, so we have our short-term needs, we had our long-term needs. For short-term needs, like we're talking about today, is to create that conservation committee. Side note on that is if there's any funding for that group to do PR and all of that stuff.
Good point, I like it.
And then the other short-term things is we have, of course, the three main parts of the water. It's our wells, our treatment, and our storage. So I think each of those three things is still a short-term topic for us. Going to the long-term needs, our RFP for the water sources, I think is our first right step for our long-term needs. Our treatment will follow what we learn from that RFP, so I don't know that we can do much more than, I think we're on the right path for our long-term with that RFP is basically what I'm saying. I think storage is probably short-term, long-term, both, and we got that on the agenda today. But I think we need a short-term wells and treatment plan and our long-term, what we're working towards with our big plan. That's what I came up with.
And to add to that, this, in the mission statement, it also says quality water. I think we need to address, where do we want to set that standard?
Well, I think our water sources are gonna
Are going to dictate
Dictate
that, which
that.
is why we can't set that until we hear back from this RFP.
In our short term, right, for the
Right,
long term, but
right.
in the short term, we have to look at what we do have for the short term to make the best decisions to get the most affordable, sustainable, and quality water.
Right.
That's my thought.
So I think that's very well said. I like
Thank
it.
you.
Anyone else?
I think the only thing to add to that is, I think we're gonna get through those, maybe it's a month or two, but, and then we reconvene when we have some of these other answers as
Yeah.
far as what the costs are for the different items, and then what the sustainability is. And so, maybe we're done at the end of February, and then we come back and whenever you guys
Great.
decide you want the RFP done or whatever.
Very good idea. Yep, absolutely. What do you guys think?
I think there's a lot of things, I would like to see it maybe continue for a little bit longer, and if it's just once a month, maybe, and continue for
Right.
more like a year, in my
Okay.
estimation.
You know, that's where I was thinking too. I mean, I don't know how we can just say in 3, 4, 6 months, we're done. I can't imagine we're done with everything that's short and long-term piece.
I don't
I
think
agree.
they were saying we were done in 3
Just
months. It's
let's
just, there was just.
Make
gonna
our
be a
short-term
break.
plan, and then we'll continue
Right.
to
Once we
come
start
back
getting
every
more
time we get
information
another
again.
piece of the
Yeah.
long-term plan. I see it being long-term, but the long-term pieces are different than every other week that we need to start figuring out our short-term plan. That's my thought.
And this may be something that, maybe the committee never officially goes away. Like you say, once we accomplish our goals, whether we do it for 7 months straight or a few months and go to once a month or whatever it is, whatever you decide, again, maybe this committee is something that can meet biannually or, again, the floor is open to what
And
your
I
ideas are.
don't know what your plan was on the timeline for the studies, but, maybe it's like 50% through or something. We come together and whoever's doing the work can give us an update on
A
it.
presentation, that's a
Yeah,
great
just-
idea, yeah.
And then, I don't wanna make, it shouldn't be something that they gotta come present every month. That's a waste of
Right.
everybody's time.
Right.
But maybe once in the interim and once when it's done,
Okay.
we get a chance to review it, and then, they
Mhm.
come back and we can ask some questions, and then, I don't know, maybe after that it's as needed then.
What do you guys think? And as I'm asking this, I want to just sidetrack for a minute. I've talked about this with a few members. Please feel free to speak your mind. I don't want anyone to feel like their opinion, number one, I don't want you to feel like your opinion doesn't matter. Number two, I don't want you to feel like anybody's going to be upset or gang up on you if you are thinking outside the box with respect to how the direction that we're moving. This should be a judgment-free zone, I guess. So,
Open forum.
Open
And then I
forum.
think I made that clear when I sent the email out to everyone this afternoon. I just think that we're all afraid to say what's really on our minds sometimes. And it's intimidating at times, but I just don't see that we're gonna complete any of these goals unless we can all speak freely, no matter who is sitting out there, no matter who is sitting up here.
agreed.
Guess I had a question as far as a long-term strategy. And one of the items that was identified in Stockwell's timeline was the 2016 draft updated comprehensive water system study. Has that been complete, or have we had an update on that, or could that be part of this review as far as the elements in that, or?
Yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
no, I don't think we gave them a permission to finish it last week, did we?
I don't believe that we did, but we should have, because it's already paid for, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
The update is already paid for, from what I've been told.
So let's get it
Right,
done.
is that correct, Brian?
For the most part, I think it is,
For
yes.
the most
We're
part,
just
that
waiting.
was my understanding,
Yeah,
but we did
as
not
far as-
tell them to finish it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how we can, I mean, it's, we had them under contract with a scope of work, so I don't know why we wouldn't.
I don't know why it wouldn't be,
As,
yeah.
as part of the contract, is there a timeline in as to
Not
when
that
a
I could,
final
I could look back at it
Okay.
closer, but I don't remember recalling seeing an actual completion date.
And this is what he said he could complete within like a month.
Yep, it was the cost analysis of the different treatment processes.
And Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but John's not here tonight, but it was my understanding that when John talked about this last meeting, that you guys were working on that. That is not being held up, is that correct?
I haven't worked on it in the last
I think
few weeks.
everything is being
Okay.
held up,
Yeah, I
so
don't-
nothing is.
Well, but that's already paid for, I guess.
Any
What-
new projects.
Any new projects, that's
I don't-
not a new project, that was paid for a year ago.
Yeah, yeah, I understood John to say that there would be an update and he would try to get that done in a month.
Yeah.
That's what I understood.
That, me too, yeah. So to answer your question, yes, we will have that, and I'll follow through with John on this to make sure that we're clear.
Apologize for the question, I missed the last meeting if he
Yep.
presented information, but I
Yep.
think that's
No
an
worries.
important part for the committee to review.
Okay. So with that being said, short-term, long-term plans, we want to tackle water quantity, we want to tackle water quality, right? Some of those we can't get to until we
I
reach
think
the
when
preceding
we're,
steps.
for short term, when we're talking about the wells and the treatment, we're talking about the quality. By choosing which wells or how, for short term, we have to choose from what we've got, which are our wells. So that's my thought, is it's a big discussion on a good plan of which wells should we be using for the, while we're looking at these long-term needs. Because I don't necessarily think the way that we have it is the only way it could be done.
Let's be clear on short-term goals. What do we consider,
short?
what's a short-term, what are we talking time frame? Short-term, what we've been planning
Couple
for
years.
is, I mean, we're talking 30 years. What is short-term,
Short-term
5
is-
years?
Yeah, or less.
Okay, we're not talking June when people are watering their yards.
No.
Okay.
No, I'm not.
That's not short-term,
No.
because any
But should it be?
Well, any well discussion or construction of any projects at this point, in order for that, anything to proceed and be completed by the time we're looking at June. In my opinion, conservation right now is the only short term. If you're looking at the next 3 months or 4 months down the road, that is the only item, in my opinion, unless somebody else can come up with something that we can have an immediate water source, that's not gonna happen.
You're saying the
I'm
conservation
saying
piece
well
would
8
be,
won't be done, well 7 isn't being used, we still have well 1, well 6, and well 3.
right, but what you're saying is the conservation piece is what you think should be short-term and,
I'm talking
Doable.
short term, 3-4 months.
right.
Couple months.
Immediate,
That's-
yeah, not
that's
short-term,
immediate.
immediate.
Conservation is immediate,
Okay,
short-term.
so we have
or
3 goals,
near-
immediate, short term, and long term,
Yeah,
okay?
Well,
you know.
I guess I just have some ideas. Can I just go for it?
Go for it.
With the well, okay, so,
Absolutely.
we've got 1, 6, and 3. 3 is the one that's not being used, 7 is the one we're talking about hooking up. What if we didn't hook up 7 and used 3? And I know it's not hooked up to the treatment plant. Is there a way to put a small treatment plant, because it doesn't take a lot of treatment for well 3, where it's at, since we don't have the pipes all the way down to the treatment plant? Is that a thing? Could it have its own little treatment right there? And we could then use 3 instead of 7?
Not to meet the immediate goal.
Like, I mean, how long is that kind of a thing? It's a big thing?
Yeah.
I don't know.
By
Since
the
you guys
time
automatic, I mean, you throw the water right out.
No, by the time we
For
get
you.
through a planning phase and potentially the RFP, if that was gonna identify well 3 is still a sustainable water source, we wouldn't want to invest the money in it unless it was included as an alternate water source, if you will, that would be treated in the future. When that finally becomes fruition, then you have to look at the design and getting the design completed and the actual construction. So in all reality, unless we go out with a design right now, it's still 2 years out.
Or you
Before
just
we
turn
add-
number 3 on.
That's,
With a treatment.
but no, without.
There's no treatment.
No, I'm saying it would be, you can turn it on right now and use it. I'm saying if
We
we
have
were
chlorine,
to
we
build a
disinfect it.
treatment plant at well 3, you're saying it would be 2 to 3 years
For that part.
for it to be finished.
Realistically,
And the
if
quality
it
of
was,
water would go down, because you're not getting treated water out of well 3, so then you're reducing your quality. Right now, we have
Well,
good
what-
quality coming out of our plant.
True, but we don't have well 7 hooked to it.
Right, but, what you're saying is not do well 7,
Yeah.
just use well 3, well, then you're gonna reduce that quality,
Yeah, I get that.
so.
well 3 could be included in the short-term goals if we're talking
That's
5
what I'm
years
talk-
out.
that's
It is
what I'm
not-
talking
It
about.
is not an immediate
Fix.
fix.
Okay. So with that being said, let's try and establish a timeline here. What do you think?
Can I ask one question? And so well 7, when could that go online? You
And
got your other baseline testing done, and, I mean, when could we start wheeling it through with the HMO system?
I mean, everything's tied in, there's some control work that needs to get fine tuned and run manually.
So I mean, so we could have that as a source.
yeah,
I'm just saying though, because when you look at well 3, your gross alpha is 5, and if we're getting 90% treatment with the HMO system, and we're running 50 on the other, we have the same amount. And one we have an abundance of water, and one we don't.
not necessarily, because they're talking about only running through 700 of well 7 at a time, whereas that's exactly what well 3 is. Does that make sense? The amount
Plus, we
per
have to
minute?
discuss well 7 later today,
Yeah.
later on, because we're also talking about fine tuning where we're pulling that water out of well 7, since the gross alpha number came back at 54.
So back to
To
Jason's
throw another
question.
monkey in the fire.
Yeah, Ryan, if we wanted to say, okay, we're going forward, we're using well 7 with the HMO and everything, is that something that could be done within the next 3 to 6 months?
Yeah.
And am I right on that? I mean, it'd be basically the same water.
Yeah, and there's,
I mean, for at least gross alpha, it'd be about the same.
Same as what?
Well 3
Well 3.
untreated.
if it lines up with the pilot, when you actually go out and do the test, results can vary.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
There's tons of variables that go in a water treatment plant. When you scale it up, there's some that can change.
Okay,
So if we talk about an immediate timeline being June
Couple
to
months,
this,
right?
2018, well 7 is, or would fall under that immediate thing?
Immediate? Can't we do what we're doing right now?
can't we do what?
The
Keep
amount,
keep-
1 and 6, and the treatment that we have with this new treatment, we should be fine as long as we do the even odd in the
think for
summer and
conservation,
people,
it's been
and conservation,
Pretty
yeah.
clearly stated with
Yes.
conservation efforts that were already in place with a
Yes,
water conservation. If the public would adhere to that we would be fine
Yes.
immediately
agreed.
this summer with
And the next couple.
amount of water that we
Yeah.
produce.
And what's nice about that is we can have well 7 as a backup if we need it, rather than going to a complete watering ban. But I
If it
I think
were-
there's going to be a
Three as
lot
well.
less backlash if we do, you know, like what you're talking about, Kim, do what we're doing, have conservation in place, and not necessarily rely on well 7 as one of our main feeds. I mean, that's something that unfortunately we're going to have to, that's a tough one to tackle, but we're going to have to tackle that.
And to do with what, on well 7, what is the cost that we're looking at? Do we know?
Cost of what?
To do what?
To do what, to get 7 up and running?
Well,
We've already spent it.
We've spent, yeah.
So there's-
well, but no, there's more costs. I mean, we talked about last meeting doing additional testing, where we're gonna have to, because that gross alpha number was expected to be half of what it is after their, you know, pump test. So now the question comes into mind, well, is it because of a short pump test, we do a longer pump test, or do we test at different levels? Maybe there's a sweet spot. And that's gonna to answer your question, that's gonna cost money. You know, there's gonna be costs associated with that, further testing. Am I right on that? I mean, is that kind of what?
It depends on your scope of your test, but yeah, and how we want to go about it, I guess.
I mean, obviously, if we're doing the testing up and down the line, that's going to cost a lot more. But if we didn't do the test up and down, I mean, are we about paid in full for the thing or not? Does anybody know?
7.
Well, regardless whether we're paid, if we've got the money, there is money for these water projects.
Yeah, they were budgeted for, but I just was, you know, to not waste any more money than what we had, I think was Kim's point, was don't put any more money into well 7 until we find out what else we have, right?
I just don't like well 7. Let's just be honest.
As do a lot of people.
Well,
There's
And
a lot
that's-
of
and
people who
that's-
don't want us to use well 7.
Yes, and that's
A lot
true.
of people I've talked to,
well, okay.
they're
Let-
concerned about
Let me
it.
pull back a second on, so we've got the test results from wells, so that's 3, 7, so 1 and 6. This, okay, wasn't this the test then with the HMO in process? Or do we not have that test yet?
What's the date on it?
12/19.
She does, yeah, it's
No,
not,
that's
No.
before.
So we don't
we just
know.
got those back.
The
Correct. I think they're,
radium, yes, is less than 1. The gross alpha is 10.
That's treated.
Treated in 1 and 6, without the HMO now. Now I want to know what the number is with the HMO process. Is it bringing it down to nothing? Because if it can't bring those numbers down, what's it going to do with 7? 7's way out there.
Way up there. And that's,
Again, I'm just
so
a
there's
layman.
another avenue to look at this, is,
Loud mouth.
well 7, we're talking about spending more money to test it. But if we don't, if we just take it like it is, the treatment process to get that 54 down to an acceptable level is gonna be more costly. You know, that's gonna cost money to treat that water down to where we want it.
Well, they already
If-
put
if-
that in, that system is in place, but does it matter how much, I don't understand how it works, is my problem.
Well, but what I'm saying is where we're drawing the water, the way it's set up, where we're drawing the water out currently is what gave us this gross alpha number of 54. And so
Yeah.
to treat that down to an acceptable level is going to be more costly than what was originally anticipated. And I talked to John last night, is that HMO system going to be, are we going to need to adjust it? And the answer is yes, we're going to need to adjust it. And that will cost, you know, it costs
Can you
more,
explain HMO?
we're gonna use more media, you know, it's just, there's gonna be costs associated.
Oh, no, I'm not.
So the long term here, the idea that we are, you know, we've got to take care of some short term, but the long term thing, have we decided as far as a group that we are going to stick with trying to implement what we presently have and making it better and trying to make it work? Or have we looked at the idea of the, you know, outward to go to Sioux Falls or to use some of Minnehaha County rural water? I mean, has that kind of been thrown out that we're not going any of those directions at this point?
No, definitely not. In fact,
That's what our
the,
RFP 's
that's
for.
what the RFP is for, and I think that RFP will
It's the
address
long term.
a lot of those issues. Incidentally, that RFP did get passed last night. It's probably one of the biggest accomplishments we've made. I mean, don't underestimate that. That was a huge accomplishment that we as a committee tackled. That's a great thing. So what do you think? Given our immediate term needs, our short-term and long-term, we kind of have an understanding of what we're doing. We're going to use the water that we have available to us for the immediate term. We have to. We don't have another choice because you can't hook up to an additional water source and treat it in 2 months. You know, that's going to fall into more of a short-term plan in between an intermediate and short-term plan. So for our intermediate plan, we kind of know what we have to do. We have to deal with what we have, implement conservation, and we can discuss well 7. We can take an entire meeting to discuss well 7 if we need to. Given that, we know kind of where we want to go for a long-term plan as far as amount of time. I mean, the numbers have been thrown out there between 30 and 50 years. And again, that's what the state agencies recommend as well. So given that information, do you think that we can have some of these answers for our immediate needs and set our standard? Because we're going to have to set the standard of how much do we want to treat that water to get it to this standard, you know, or to an acceptable level. And that's not for tonight. That'll be quite a discussion, but we know we need to tackle that. So given that, what do you think as far as timeline? Do we need to try and get some of these immediate and short-term goals accomplished by June or July?
Just for a discussion point, I think
Well, 8 stuff needs to be.
if we're moving forward with, we are moving forward with this RFP, we are tasked with writing it. My thought, Brian and I have talked about this, is for us to come up with a realistic agreement on the quality of water in the next week, because we have to write the RFP, is, to me, does not seem realistic. There are MCLs that are set by the safe. Can I just finish?
No, yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, they're MCL set, yeah.
Okay, I thought you were gonna argue with me on the MCL.
Oh, no, I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I'm like, why do we have to argue about that? It's already
Okay,
set.
well, we're not arguing.
Right.
What I'm getting at is, I think that is the baseline that needs to be set. So maybe we are in
Okay.
agreement before I even speak, because the cost of the treatment is going to be reflective of what quality we want.
Right.
So
Right.
if it's gonna cost a certain amount at the MCLs that have been set, it's just gonna cost more
Right.
to get it better than that. So
Right.
if we're all in agreement, we have to set an MCL level in order to have that baseline, regardless of if it's not the acceptable quality that we want at this point in order to move forward with this RFP that has to be
Okay,
established.
so to move forward with that, as a group, can we agree that for our RFP for additional water sources, we need to have at least meet the MCL, the current MCL levels or
Use the
standards
state-
issued by the
They
state?
have to do that.
Well, we have to, but
Yeah.
can we agree that
Yeah,
we
you don't
can
have to
word
use that
the
good
RFP, is that good enough?
Yes, because we
I
can make
think-
decisions after it.
I don't know, as a people, as a group, I mean, as far as our community, are they gonna be happy?
It's just
Well,
data.
What this RFP is to identify additional water sources, it's
Yeah.
not to identify treatment processes.
Right.
That's gonna be the next step. What we need to do is set, okay, we want water at a certain level. And then the next step is to do the treatment process. That's where you set if you want it less than 5 picocuries per liter, you want it to 0 or 1 or 2. Then we look at the different treatment options and say, okay, this treatment option meets this requirement, this one, and then we can quantify those. Because right now, we're looking at a pretty big RFP, a pretty big study. And to throw a whole treatment process in there is going to be fairly complicated.
Well, I think there's
So
two
that needs to be
different
separate.
things.
Yeah,
you
we
need
said-
to see
Okay.
all
Different
different
things.
things.
That's why we
Do
said
we
And
one
the-
that agree
source.
If that's part of the treatment rather than the
RFP.
And the beauty of this process is, like you said, the second part of that will quantify, because the first part is going to give us an idea of where we want to bring this water from, which is also going to have some cost analysis associated with that, which is going to be part of this decision. How clean of water do you want? Because it all comes at a cost, you know? So to start with, yeah, I agree. And as far as
Yeah.
getting specifics for the treatment of it, we can handle that a little later down the road, so.
But that's always where they start. When they do a study like this, they're gonna start and see what source has what quality of water
Mhm.
compared to the MCL. That's, I mean, it's like a no-brainer. That's
Okay.
where you stop.
Okay,
So,
all right,
Do we need to vote?
yeah, let's,
That'll include a quantity also, I mean, the volume, we're not going to, we talked about this last night, we're not going at the council meeting, we don't want to identify another source of water that's gonna add let's just say 1.2 million gallons a day into our system. We want to quantify our total volume needed, what's our total, that 4.2 million gallons is what we're going to base our RFP on, and where do we get our water for 4.2 million? Not where do we get an additional 1.2 million.
Agreed.
Right.
Like
So that,
from
just want to be
scratch.
clear on
Right.
that.
4.2 million gallons a day, Paul?
Right.
Okay.
What projection is that? That's 20 years?
Well, it was based on the water,
Yeah, the
The
water
study.
Study and stock.
4.6 million based
I'd
on the
have-
population of the local.
yeah, it was based on the population.
okay.
I'm not.
And I think that was 20 years.
I'll be upfront, I'm not a big believer in population projections, because they're always wrong. I'd rather look at trigger points, but we need X amount of volume based on today's population, it's pretty easy to compute. But to say, we're gonna be a population of 15,500 in 20 years, we've been a city for 44 years. We've had population projections that today we would be at 5,000 or about 20 to 25,000. So that's the range that we're dealing with population projections. I want to see trigger points. So when we reach X number of gallons, we need to be in design on the next well. When we reach 90%, we need to be in construction. Same thing with the treatment plant. So be careful when you're talking about population projections, because if you go much past 5 years, it's a guess. But 4.6 was identified in the 2013 study.
Was it
the project-
4.6, it wasn't 4.2?
No, I think it was 4.6.
Okay.
But we can come up with that number and.
Right,
run
and that
it.
was based on roughly a population of 15,000,
Yeah.
so.
How much would the two big water towers hold?
They were 1.25.
1.25 each.
2.5
Each,
Okay.
or total.
Yeah, 2.5 total. Okay, so back to the original question. What are your thoughts on timeline of getting some of these immediate,
Do we want to take a vote on that first, so that we can clear that out
a vote on
for
what?
the RFP thing?
We're gonna write it, I mean, it's already been
Okay.
approved, so we're moving forward with, like, I think the MCL part of it, because I know we've been talking about quality, it was just something that I wanted to establish, or just talk about. I don't think
Okay.
it needs to be voted on, but we're gonna write the RFP, it's going to be reviewed by council. We're gonna try to get that draft to the council by the next council meeting.
Is that what these
Is
are?
that, what is this
No.
then?
No,
We'll get to those after a bit. Those are,
This is different than what?
yeah, these RFPs were submitted
this is
by
not
some
something that we
individuals,
wrote.
just as an example. And we can, yeah, we'll discuss those after a bit.
And once we get the RFP drafted, we'll also get it out to the committee.
So how long will it take you to draft that, did you think?
next week.
By next council
For the
meeting.
next council meeting, right? Which is 2 weeks from last night.
Yep.
And does it need to be reviewed again, or then will it be ready to go out?
I would hope that it would be ready to go out.
But you have it done.
Yep. Once it's done and reviewed by council, our hope would be that it's the right RFP.
It would
And then
actually
it's
be
approved.
3 weeks,
Yeah,
because there's
there's
5
extra Monday.
weeks. There's 5 weeks in January.
Okay,
So
have you,
our target is February 5th.
What date is that?
February 5th.
February 5th.
The
Have you
first Monday
decided-
in February.
how you're going to put that out? Are you going to send it direct? Are you going to put it in the paper? Do you know?
It would be advertised. We're not gonna select engineering firms to submit. We'll just, I'm sure we'll get some submittals. Hopefully we get some submittals on it. And, we'll select from there. We'll have a selection committee formed.
And from what I've been told, it's about a 3 to 4 week process for firms to respond to that. Is that,
Yeah,
would you,
a month is.
these two guys work in the field. I mean, can you confirm that?
Yeah.
So you're
that's
asking
enough
for proposals back in 3 weeks, you said?
We'd set a deadline 3 to 4 weeks out from when we get the RFP approved. And then after they're submitted, we'll go through basically a narrowing it down to 3, maybe 4 firms that we would interview. And then the interview process has to take place. There's some time for preparation for interviews too, to allow engineering firms the opportunity to prepare for those. And then we would select once those interviews are completed, and that process takes some time as well.
Like how much time are you thinking?
I think 2 to 3 weeks is probably enough to prepare for interviews, and then another probably week or two to decide
Okay.
after
So
that.
we're looking at 8 to 10 weeks from February.
Start
Yeah.
from
From the time that we actually get the RFP approved,
So,
10 weeks.
I'd say 2
Possibly.
to 3 months.
Okay.
Sound about right?
And again, just for our purposes, so that people don't feel like this is a biased opinion, I'm gonna ask the two gentlemen that work in this field for companies that respond to water development RFPs. Is that sound about right?
You know, I'm on the transportation side, but yeah, I mean, it's generally 3 to 4 weeks for some of this magnitude, and then you guys will spend a certain amount of time narrowing it down, and then usually it's like 7 to 10 days after that is when we schedule interviews. So,
Okay.
and then, I mean, as far as that goes, we've had decisions made the same day as the interview. And then it's whatever the next council is when you take the contract through. So I think that 10 weeks is pretty legitimate for the
Okay.
whole process to take place.
You agree, Kevin?
Yeah,
Okay.
the one unknown is the amount of time it takes to negotiate the agreement with whoever is
Mhm.
selected by
Okay.
the interview team. So that can take some time, just crafting the agreement with the scope of services. And I'd say 10 weeks is probably, I mean, it's optimistic, so.
Okay.
Well, that's not
workable.
included in that 10 weeks.
Oh, okay.
That, we're just talking about getting to the point where we get the
Make a
interviews done
decision.
and make a decision on
Make
who
a
that firm
decision
is.
on
And
who
then after that period is up, then we go into
Yeah,
negotiations with
that's
that firm
reasonable.
Okay.
and develop a scope of work and a timeline and
Mhm.
what is realistic to actually get this water resource plan in place.
Okay, well, and that's good to know. I think it's important to understand that this doesn't just happen in 2 weeks. It does take time, but again, in the end, I think it'll be worth it. I think we're doing our due diligence on an issue.
What is the RFP going to cover? What are you asking for?
Alternate water sources.
Period?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean,
With
it's
a
gonna
cost
be
analysis.
pretty broad-based, but it'll include costs associated with
Right, but
what
just,
developing those will cost.
what are our options for water sources?
Yep, we're not gonna limit that to, I mean, I think it's prudent to allow
Oh, yeah.
those consultants to come up with legitimate options, and we're not gonna tell them which ones. We would like them to analyze the existing system that we have as well, 1, 3, 6, 7, potentially 8.
But also last night, there was discussion, let's maybe go out to Iowa or Minnesota too.
No question,
not
that's
open
part of
that-
it too,
Open
yeah.
that up for
Yep.
So
possibility.
it's wide open.
Yeah, that was
It's
something that
wide
I had
open.
mentioned several meetings ago, was that the alternate water source plan that we would come up with shouldn't be limited to just already treated water, Minnehaha, rural water, city of Sioux Falls. It should identify the existing wells, potentially wells that we're not aware of, and aquifers that we haven't explored yet. And if those exist, we would hope that that consultant that would be selected has experience in identifying those alternate water sources and offer those as legitimate suggestions.
Yep.
With costs associated with getting those to the system, and then future would include treatment, potentially even water softening, which would further reduce radium if that's what we choose. Those then should identify, this is getting into long-term discussion, those then would identify costs for treatment, which then could be turned into a rate structure, which would be identified for acceptance to the general public that this is what your rates are gonna be increased to by implementing these different water treatment processes and potentially water softening.
That sounds really good.
So what I say, our long-term needs, we're doing it. I mean, that's all we can start with, is this, because we don't know our treatment until we know our sources.
Correct.
Long-term.
That's a good question.
Yes, ma'am.
I know I'm not part of the committee.
Oh,
but-
that's all right.
So once the RFPs are sent out to the engineering firms and you get people to respond to them and the interview process starts, what is the criteria to interview and select a firm that's gonna go out now and do this further study for us on our potential water sources? I mean, how are you gonna know if 5 firms come, which one's gonna do the best job for you? Are they gonna bring to you kind of what they know this area to be already and what
Yep.
potential water sources?
So RFPs include an engineering firm that will select a team of professionals, not just that engineering firm, but they could potentially team with other engineering firms, hydrologists, geologists. And then those teams of engineering firms that come to the table would have projects that they've had experiences with that they would include as a part of their RFP. And that's what we would, just like interviewing somebody for an individual job, you look at their experience and their past history and potentially where they've worked, their degree, what school they graduated from. Is a
Will
big one.
anybody from the water committee be involved in that interview process then?
We're not, we haven't selected the committee yet, or
Okay.
who's gonna be doing the interviewing, so that's something that can be discussed, but
That is something we have discussed a little bit is, you know, who's going to be involved in that process. We don't have a definitive answer yet. I think the obvious possibilities are staff, council, and water committee. If we can pull together a group from those three sources, that kind of sounds good.
To kind of jump back into
But we don't
that,
have a definitive answer.
to kind of jump back into that, interviewing the firms, is there going to be any criteria, like a scoring criteria? That's my,
yep, typically there is, whether they're local, the experience obviously is a big one. There's templates that we could take a look at.
You develop a matrix,
okay,
and then
that's,
you weight the scores.
You get certain,
Okay,
you get certain
perfect.
points for certain types of criteria. Yep. That's pretty common.
okay.
So what do you think about us meeting as a group? What are your thoughts? Do we want to continue meeting every 2 weeks until summer or until fall and go to once a month or twice a year? Let's
I think
make
we need
it
to get our
somewhat of
short
a...
needs.
I think there's one piece that we're kind of missing yet, and I visited with Kevin about this, and I visited with Pat a little bit about it, and I think I visited with Jay, but water rights.
Mhm.
What are our current water rights? Are there any, I know we have some future water rights. I don't understand that process very well, and I think that might be beneficial to us as a group.
So I have contacted an individual that's going to come present to our group about water rights.
Okay.
And let me say this, like what Kim may have just said, if you're not comfortable making this decision on timeline tonight, then that's fine. We won't. We'll come back to this. You tell me.
Well, I think that the citizens
I don't
are
think
going
so,
to
but
expect
I'll
us
go
to
off
be
like you.
here and be active during the peak season. I'd hate for us to say, well, let's disband in about June, and then
Yeah,
water-
have
That's when
summer
all,
off.
sure.
water usage starts to go up, so I think we have an obligation to the community, whether there's a water conservation subcommittee or not, that we're kind of committed to this process, and knowing that it's going to be April before a firm is selected for some of this, maybe we can back off on our meeting schedule a little with summer coming around, but
Mhm.
I think we need to be prepared to stay committed, at least for the immediate term, to get through water usage 2018, and hopefully by 2019, through conservation measures and anything else, connections elsewhere, that we've got some other physical options that include additional sources of water.
Okay. So are we comfortable saying we want to continue to meet every 2 weeks until September? Or do we want to change that at all, or what are your thoughts? Because I agree with that. We don't want to...
I think September is a good time frame. In my mind, I'm thinking September
I
would be
think
the soonest we could
we need
drop off.
to make our short-term goals, and if we get that stuff done, then we wait till the RFP thing comes through, and then we decide from there how much work we still need to do there. But the short-term stuff, I mean, we need to talk about well 7 and the potential of this well 8. I think those are our 1 to 5 year stuff that we have to talk about, just to sustain while we're waiting for all of this. I would like you to explain this HMO process that we have, because I don't understand it.
I think Ryan would probably do a better job of that than me.
So right now, you guys, you have a green sand
Yes,
filter.
Angie.
Is that a topic for a meeting, or is are you just wanting an explanation now? Because I think it's kind of in-depth, and
It might be a topic for a meeting that
Okay.
staff explains our system, the entire system.
When we go on a field trip
We can,
Woohoo!
absolutely.
Are you
on a
driving?
warmer day?
Sure, I'll try.
You'd have to wait till
No
June.
hood ornaments.
I think to Don's point, I think we need to come up with an estimated time frame, and I think August, if we're done in June, great. But if August comes and we still aren't feeling like we're ready to drop off to once a month or once every 3 months, we continue on. But I think we need to establish that.
We need to establish it. I'm being asked, the reason this is on here, I'm being asked, people want to know how much of their time they need to commit to this. Are they going to be attending meetings in the summer or in the fall or next winter? They want to have an idea. There's people on this committee and people in the community that want to have an idea of what we're doing. And again, this is just a general idea, but
I do kind of have to agree with Kim, I think, and until the RFP process comes back, I think we need to continue meeting every couple of weeks and then reevaluate once that RFP process comes on. I never thought of it before, but yeah, we should probably be available during peak season.
active.
Yeah, and then maybe that's when we go down, once we get into the next steps, maybe we drop down to once a month for a little while,
Right.
and then maybe we can go every other month.
Okay, so how about we say this RFP process is, again, a big bull we've had to take by the horns, and it's gonna be a large project and a massive amount of understanding for us, for some of us that don't deal with that. So until we get to that process, can we say that we will, and knowing that this process is gonna be several months, can we say we're gonna continue our current schedule? At that point, we will redefine our needs, which will give us a schedule. Do we meet every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks?
At some point, we're gonna have to address the treatment part, and if that has to go to an RFP, this could,
Again, and that's why I say
That would be After
reevaluate.
this one.
After this RFP comes back and we have a decision made, knowing what we're gonna do to provide our immediate needs and some of our short-term needs, at that point, we can come back and reevaluate. Because if we want to be involved in an RFP for the treatment, we're talking another 3 or 4 months, right?
That's after this study is done.
After this is done.
Because you
right.
can't do the treatment
Right.
until we've chosen our water sources. I mean, if it's gonna change, but of course, then we also need another treatment plant and where that'll be, and it all matters on where our sources are.
I do think we have to be cognizant that people are gonna be taking vacations and they do have other things going on, and I think it needs to be said out loud, and I think we all kinda know, if you can't be here, you can't be here, it's understood. And I think we, as committee members, have to take it upon ourselves to get up to speed by the next meeting that we come to.
Agreed. And again, that's why people are asking me, they want to know, hey, do I need to plan my summer around the fact that I need to be here every 2 weeks? We need to kind of establish that. So having said all this, we have a timeline of roughly 3 to 4 months to have this RFP kind of completed. Completed meaning back and a decision made. Until then, I think we need to stay on track with our current schedule. Do we all agree?
Yes.
Anybody disagree? Okay. So at that point, let's say that at that point we will revisit the topic as far as our meeting schedule.
I think it is important to let the community know that we are committed to this, and we realize that what we are doing now has ramifications, hopefully 20, 30 years from now. And so I think it's important to convey to the rest of the community what Kevin was saying. We are going to be responsible, and we will be here for them as long as we need to be here. I mean, we are all very busy people. I know that, but we will be here as long as it takes to do what we came to do and to do it right. Because 20 years from now, I don't want them to look back and go, who were those dummies that were on that committee?
They probably will anyways,
That
but.
didn't get it done. They're going to be saying, who missed that opportunity? Who didn't do it?
Right.
And I want them to look back and say, thank God there was this water committee that worked with the city, that worked with the council,
Right.
and gotta report.
So I agree with that. I think that's a great point, and I wrote that down for my notes. I will bring that up at our council meeting, and I think it's a great point to mention that we relay that information to the community. So.
I think we stick to our every 2 weeks and get our short-term goal stuff figured out, what it is the city needs, immediate needs on for well 7, well 8. And then I guess anything with treatment that goes with that, and then the water towers. Those are the things that we have to get done. If we got done with all of those things and we still had 3 weeks before the long-term thing, then I think then we would wait till then. I'm not saying we would. If we don't, we just keep going every 2 weeks. That's my
So
thought.
what-
I'm not saying though that we definitely come every 2 weeks, even if we get all of this figured out.
So what month are you thinking? Or are you
Not.
leaving it open?
Yeah.
Just open. Okay.
However long it takes
I'm-
us to
I'm fine
get
with
that
that.
stuff done. But I'm just saying that the short term is one thing, and then the long term is kind of another thing. And we're all saying, yeah, we're here for the long term. The long term stuff is gonna be 3 months, 4 months down the road for us to, I guess, do our part. Till then, we've got these short term things that the city is trying to work on, that they've been told to stop, and now we gotta figure out what direction they should go, because we still have those things in the air. That's my thought.
Okay, so I like that, to say that we're gonna keep meeting until our short-term and immediate needs are met.
Yeah.
We're gonna stay on task,
We're decided, I wouldn't say decided.
decided.
Our recommendations to the council
Are we okay with that?
Yes.
Anybody disagree? Or have, okay.
Repeat it again for me. Keep meeting till short-term and immediate needs are identified
Oh, yeah.
Good word.
Identified.
and presented to council?
Yes. I have a feeling you must be doing the notes this time.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Love it.
Okay. And
And
again,
I'm gonna hand them to Amanda and make her do it.
Here's what happens, do the notes.
Just try to follow.
That's your homework.
okay, so that.
She can read, watch the meeting.
That's, I know that's a complex topic because we don't know what we don't know, and we don't know what we need because we don't know what we need yet. So that can be somewhat intermingling, but I think we've established a general timeline of what we want to accomplish, and I will present that to the council at our next council.
When it comes to generalized agenda items, are there other things that people feel that we need more information on, other than like water rights and the HMO process and all that stuff? Is there anything else anybody else needs?
I'm wondering if there have been talks with Minnehaha Community Water Corp
Since,
since our last meeting?
I don't think we have reached out to them, have we?
Have we started communication with them about buying water as an option?
I know it was
I mean,
mentioned.
we met with them that one time and talked about what it would take
We've
to,
had conversations with them
Certain-
about purchasing water.
and
You
certain,
have?
Oh, yeah.
I think you mentioned throughout the
We-
last couple of years you have.
Oh,
correct?
I mean,
No,
like
recently,
recently?
we talked about that at one of our meetings, that we had a meeting at City Hall with Minnehaha Rural Water,
That was in November.
wasn't it? It was prior to when they presented.
Mhm.
It was that day, I think,
Oh,
or the day before.
before maybe.
So,
It's
Yeah,
all,
we had
so
it
it's
what-
in-
what's
together.
the answer there?
We had talked about what it would take to get certain volumes, and he had
Right.
presented that up to 400,000 gallons we
Right.
potentially have now, but if it was any more than that, up to the million, then we'd have to install that extra pipeline and potentially look
Okay,
at
but
what
we
they would
have
have to
not
do.
been in serious talks with them about
As far as
about what it
getting,
would take and
no,
purchasing
as far as
water and
into
what
a
they
con-
can do and all of
I
that.
think
Wouldn't
they're
that be-
hoping that that's gonna be part of the whole RFP
RFP.
process, right?
Because that's a long-term thing.
What we're hoping is
But it
that
could
these
be short-term
engineering.
as well. It could
Right.
be both.
Oh, absolutely.
I think,
Right,
I
so
think
that-
it needs to be short-term.
Because I would think you'd want that and the idea of hooking up to Sioux Falls as well, what the cost would be on all that,
Right.
to make a good decision.
And that's one thing we've discussed is these engineering firms that respond to the RFP, you know, that's going to be part of their scope, part of their job is to go talk to the MCWCs and the LNCs and Sioux Falls and get an understanding. And of course, they're going to have, you know, MCWC is going to have their engineering department come up with some hard numbers, you know, and that just, it takes time, which is why this is gonna be not a 2-week process, but maybe a 10-week process.
So let me maybe summarize. Short term is 3 to 5 years, I think. That was what we established, correct?
3 to 5 years.
The RFP is gonna be completed. The process of identifying alternate water sources is gonna be done in the next year. Okay, so as a part of that alternate water source identification, if Minnehaha Rural Water is a viable water source for the city of Brandon, it would also include switching our system from chlorine to chloramine, correct? So that's the treatment process that has to happen. If that is a viable option, that's going to include costs. If we were going to move forward with Minnehaha Rural Water, that can't just happen in the next, I'll say, year.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as a short-term solution, we could potentially hook up to Minnehaha Rural Water and change our treatment process from chlorine to chloramine, which would include a project for whatever we need for metering and pumps and valves and piping to Minnehaha Rural Water. That could potentially be done, that project, in the short term, what we say 3 to 5 years. So as far as a short-term solution, it potentially could be, that would be identified through the RFP process, which would include costs. So it's not necessarily a long-term solution, if you will.
But it could be potentially both, a short-term and part of the long-term goal.
Well, if it's short-term, identified in the next 3 to 5 years, we would certainly hope that that would be
Right.
used for the next
Yeah.
20 to 50 years.
Okay.
if
Right,
that was-
Right.
yes.
Okay, so then I don't know if I'm out of your order here. Then I guess I need to go back to our immediate actions, what our immediate plans are, so that this summer, we don't run into what we ran into last summer.
Yeah.
So, what are we doing?
Conservation.
Conservation.
Yeah, go back, take care of it,
Yes.
just conservation?
For the short-term, immediate, yes,
For
this
this
next
summer.
summer.
Yes.
That will
We,
get us
well,
through this
we've
summer.
identified the volume of water that we use if we could potentially get the public educated, which I think is a process that needs to begin very soon.
Yep.
Okay.
We're looking at getting the water committee established, actually coming up with the criteria that we would like to establish so that we can get the education out to the public. Just identifying how we get this information to the public is gonna take some time. If that's a month or 2 months, and then actually coming up with the propaganda, if it's inserts in our monthly billing, if it's public meetings and Facebook and social media and any outlet that we can find, because we do this throughout the year. When we have projects, we try to find the best way that we can get this information out to the public. We used the signs on the edge of town when we went into the immediate water ban. It was just another idea that we had. It reaches the majority of the public because they're traveling to
That's
from
actually
Sioux
how I
Falls
found
or
out about it. So
Yeah,
that's
no,
a
that's
good
good.
one. That's a good one.
But we've talked about that, and we may be getting off subject here, but real quick, it's
If that.
it's not as easy for us to identify what we just put in a sign. If we're going to have signs on the edge of town, we could put them there permanently and have some sort of scrolling lettering and identify a boys' basketball game that night. You know, I mean, it can be public announcements, something that's an emergency, or in this case, we were hitting those numbers that we needed to put this ban in place because it was an obvious issue that we
I'd be
wanted.
curious.
So, the signs, we've talked about even purchasing signs for getting that information out to the public. They're really expensive, so if that was something that we wanted to do, we could. We rent those from signing companies. So that was a very effective form of getting information out to the public.
If we would have put that out for the odd even, I just wonder if we would never have had to have the ban.
Okay,
Because
so
that's
Ken-
how people
Ken-
get informed.
But so real quick, just to
Sorry.
finish my thought, that needs to happen fairly soon. I mean, just getting to the point where we can get the information to the public is gonna take some potential marketing strategy, and identifying what those are gonna be doesn't just happen. So it could take a month to 2 months before we're at that point where we actually start the process of getting that information to the public. And planning public meetings takes time, getting that information out in newspapers and on social media, and planning the locations and things like that too. So June's gonna be here pretty quick.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a good lead into our next topic, Water Conservation Committee. I want to kind of keep us on track here.
She has a question.
Oh,
Do you have a
yeah.
question?
Sorry, just an idea. The city offers sign up for city alerts for emergency weather. What about emergency water?
Yeah, that's an email alert, anybody, any emergency
Oh, I thought
that
it
we
was
have. No,
text.
if we have a water shut off, or a water main break, or snow alert, or whatever, we can send out an email. Now, we've got very few people signed up.
We brought that up,
We can do
there's,
that?
Oh, I'm
we
sorry.
brought that
Is it
up
on
at
the
the
city
council
website?
meeting, there's very few people signed up on that. Part of this whole process,
the
and I'm
education.
gonna get off track for just a second.
It's not in the water
Part of this
bills.
process will be educating
It's
the
education,
public
yeah.
to that as being a resource. Because that is, right. I completely agree. In fact, I think it was Barb that brought that up at our council meeting, so. Okay, so back on track. Now that we have that established, I do want to, before we get into the Water Conservation Committee, I wanted to clarify, because I was a little confused at our last meeting. I had said we were going to look into some funding from CCOG, and John Brown had mentioned they had already done that.
Thanks.
I misspoke when I said that. I was referring to possible funding from the East Dakota Water Development District. And I don't want to dangle the carrot out there, because we don't know if this is possible yet. I'm going to be working with Jay over the next week or two on this, and his agency. But just so you know, there is a possibility of getting some funding to fund this RFP that we're putting out for additional water sources. That's what I was referring to. So
And that's East Dakota, it's not Seacog.
it's not CCOG. I misspoke when I said CCOG, because when
Okay.
John responded, it kind of threw me off. I thought, wait a minute, I didn't know that they had spoke to East Dakota about this. They have not, and that's something, again, that I think is, if this happens, that'll be a great accomplishment from us as a committee. But again, that's completely theoretical at this, or hypothetical at this point. I'll keep you updated. Nothing like putting you on the spot.
The district's a potential resource for funding on any number of activities outside of actual construction.
And I need to ask John,
Conservation activities, I mean, that, relying on public outreach.
so we're going to stay on top of that, because if we can utilize that, again, I think that's a tremendous check mark for us. On to the Water Conservation Committee. What are your thoughts? We need to come up with someone to chair the committee. Someone to head the committee.
I thought you had a volunteer.
I do have one, but we've got
Did he volunteer to be on the committee or chair the committee?
to head the committee.
To head it?
Mhm.
Let him.
No one else interested?
I would be on it.
I'd be on it as well.
I'll be on it, but I don't want to run it.
And I don't know, I mean, I don't know this guy, so I don't know what his,
Does everybody know him?
So this is
Patrick.
oh.
the individual I'm talking about is Patrick Deering. He works for an engineering firm.
Okay,
He's got some background in this arena.
okay.
If he would like a co-chair, I would co-chair with him.
Okay.
Agendas and
Okay.
throwing meetings together are my wheelhouse the most well.
Okay.
I'm used to advertising.
How many, that's
in
4
town.
people.
That's a pretty good number.
Pretty good number.
Well, these folks said they would be on the committee. As far as heading the committee, is anyone else interested other than Angie as a co-chair?
You got a chair and a co-chair.
Yeah, Pat Deering, you're good to go.
Well, and we can even do it together simultaneously. Patrick and I can do
Right.
it together.
Okay.
So that's 5 of us total, right? Nobody else?
I think that's plenty.
Does the city use a specific marketing group or anything like that?
Well, that's why I said we need to know about funding, if we can hire a Caliber Creative or somebody like that to do the marketing pieces.
I can get shot, but that's okay. I happen to know somebody who does a little marketing on the side, is not on this committee, but, so if that person was utilized in like a consultant fashion,
That's
it
different.
wouldn't have to go to the committee
No.
or the council?
We should probably go out for an RFP for marketing.
Again, we would need funds from the council to the Conservation Committee.
Well, the
What are we gonna do?
Conservation Subcommittee is gonna make some recommendations as to, hey, we think that the city should be doing X, Y, and Z. Whether that's getting mailers out in some fashion, promoting the text or email alerts, coming up with, like Sioux Falls, either weight gauges or
So bring our budget to,
and then that goes to the
Council.
council, and then, and we can quantify that. We know we've got approximately 3,300 accounts. If we want to give each of those accounts a water tester, to test the soil moisture, we can figure out how much that costs.
And Jay said, you said there was a possibility of some assistance there too, right?
I
For
think like
marketing?
anything, the first thing you gotta do is figure out what you wanna do.
What do you want to do?
And have good answers to that question, rather than go, how much money have we got?
Yeah.
Right.
And then worry about how you're gonna spend it.
Come up with a proposal.
Come up with a good proposal.
We can submit it, and then
There
we
we
can
go.
figure out how much it's gonna cost, and we can steal other people's ideas.
In my conversations with the DNR, I mean, they said the same thing. There's always possibility of some grant money from the state, some assistance with this program. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but we definitely will keep that in mind. Yes, ma'am.
John, I think we have our 2 newspapers here that would be happy to help us, I'm guessing. Oh,
Micah had to left.
But
Sure.
I think we can get some cooperation from them.
We
Jamie?
have an excellent graphic
Okay.
designer, and I've done marketing for 5 years, copywriting.
Okay,
We could help if needed.
okay, all right.
And I want to remind the people that volunteered that, we heard from Sioux Falls, what they have done, and they were extremely successful. And so instead of reinventing the wheel, you got a great place to start. You got great resources already.
I agree.
Right.
I kept one of each.
But I mean, I would be in contact with
Tim
Tim.
Stefanich.
Yeah.
Okay, so Pat said he would be willing to head the committee. Is there anyone, I'll say it one last time, is there anyone else that wants to go up for that position and we vote on it? Or are we voting for Pat?
Pat and Angie.
Pat and Angie. Okay.
I don't think
I'm sure
anybody
if,
wants to.
I don't want to speak for him, but I'm sure he'll be
That you were co-chairs.
happy.
Yeah, I
with
think
that.
we can co-chair it.
That way
I
if
think
something
that'd be totally
happens.
fine.
So Pat and Angie co-chair the committee.
Do you need a
We're good
motion
with that?
or?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. None of-
Say aye. Same sign.
Can we go back in time
That
about
was
30
harsh.
seconds? Okay, so settled.
So
I
Kim,
will-
Kim, and Trudy will be committee members?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
More than enough.
okay, very good. Well, I appreciate your volunteering of your time on that. Next item, water tower completion. So I've had, again, I rely on you guys, I will try and say this every meeting, I rely on you for your input as far as what you want to accomplish at each meeting. And a lot of these items were items that were brought to me from members of the committee. So water tower completion, this was brought to me by a few members of the committee. The idea behind this is that our water towers, we are under contract for the design of the 2 towers. We can't go back and undo that. That is moving forward. We've established that we need the above ground storage. And I'll let you guys speak to that for a few moments here. I mean, what are your thoughts if anybody were to question, do we need a water tower? Do we need 2 water towers? You guys having the background, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, that was one item that I brought up from our last agenda, was water tower completion. And I mean, it's really about having that storage to fight a fire, and the secondary item is to regulate our pressures in our system. And so in trying to move at least one item forward, I wasn't really quite sure why that isn't something we'd want to move forward with. We have water that we can store that can offset heating. Certainly the pressures are an issue. It is at my house, and And so I'd like to see that stabilized and have that water in the air to provide for better pressures and just that reliability. And so I'd like to see us move forward with the water towers. The water tower, just this is some of my learning. A water tower design is primarily performance specification, and so the McGuire Irons and the different water tower manufacturers are the ones that actually do the major design. The component of the city is to set the elevation of the tank, the water in the tank, and that's going to control your pressures. And I don't know all about the system. It sounds like you're going to go to one pressure zone.
That's what our goal is, yep.
And so the elevations in both tanks will be exactly the same elevation. And so one side of town, you might have pressures that are 75 PSI. On the other side, you want to have, no lower than maybe 40, 45 PSI. And so, if we have assurances that we can meet that criteria, I'd like to see us continue to work on those and get those moving.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I just had
I
a
don't know I'm
friend-
going to have the answer for you.
No, I think it has to do with the pressures you just talked about. A friend of mine reached out to me today, as a matter of fact. She lives out in the Eagle Creek district, or that area out there. And she was saying today, she was in the shower this afternoon, she turned her water on, and it was just a trickle. She said it happens every day, the same time, and it lasts a short period of time. She was asking about that, and I thought, oh, bring it tonight. So would the water towers and having that elevated storage fix that?
Yes, Raleigh.
Hi, Raleigh.
First thing I would suggest, 9 times out of 10 when we get, we just had another one today, person called and complained that their water pressure was little or nothing. If there's nobody using the water, the pressure builds up in there. And as soon as they use it, the softener that's plugged up tends to decrease that pressure. So the minute you turn it on, yeah, it seems like you got really good pressure and all of a sudden it goes away.
Right.
It's
So-
a water softener that's plugged up.
It
If they turn
really
it down
could
and
be.
they bypass the softener, I guarantee they'll have pressure.
Angie?
The person that called us today hasn't done anything with his in 18 years.
Oh.
Angie, I called Raleigh before any of this ever happened.
Before the water committee.
Before the water committee, it was 6 months ago, 7 months ago, and I said, Raleigh, I think there's a main broke somewhere. I've got no water pressure. It worked fine this morning, but it's not. And he told me that, and I went and checked.
And I know she had.
Sure
a
enough,
water
my
softener.
10-year-old water softener was kaputs. I bypassed my water softener just to test it to see if that's what it was, and that's what it was. Came back online, it was fine. So hindsight, that's when we figured out we needed a new water softener.
So,
I know that's a little off track, but
Yeah, the other thing
Okay,
is,
thanks for that.
but he's right. I mean, that's
yeah,
First
I
thing-
don't have that problem where I don't have any water coming out, but the other thing is when you're siting the water towers, obviously to reduce the overall height of them, you try to put them on land that's as high as possible, because the less steel you're erecting, the less cost they are. And from my understanding, the two locations are the highest points that we have relative to our distribution system. So, as far as us questioning the siting, I don't know where else they would site it to reduce the height that they have to.
and early on, to your point there with the positioning and, the whatever, I asked early on and Raleigh answered that for me. I wondered why we couldn't use that existing water tower, the one that we've got, and it is because the water pressure would be so uneven.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and because of that, I'm completely okay with going forward with the two water towers.
Yeah, and from what I understand, they've said it before, you want to have at least 1 day's, requirement, which we're going to be a little bit over that, but, 10.
But it's 20-year projected.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
projected.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, we're only going to keep growing, so at some point we're going to need another tower anyway.
Right,
And so, to me, it just makes a lot of sense to let that process keep moving forward.
Right.
And we've got the other stuff certainly we need to identify, but.
and to talk specifically here, when we say that process, we're referring to continuing the design because it's not completed. Is that correct, Brian? And or the construction. Is that what we're saying? I mean, I guess I want to be specific on that.
Yeah.
The contract that city council put through tasks 2 through 4 and 5 and 6, which is all the way through the design. The only thing they still need approval on is 7 and 8, which is the construction of them.
Design and bidding process, we would actually bid the project and then accept a contractor and get them on
So
contract.
basically, it would be us to recommend to city council to move forward with their agreement on the water towers with Stockwell's.
Yeah, I mean, that was part of us putting projects on hold, but we were still moving forward with the land purchase, if you recall.
Yeah, that's
So that
done.
was- But that was still part of the design, so we were.
That was still in the 6 area,
But
right?
technically, we're still moving forward with what we had contracts with Stockwell for, it's just the design portion of it.
Right.
that we would be pursuing.
Right.
So is that contract through construction then?
Nope, it's
No,
just.
It's just
bidding.
design and
Just
bidding?
design. The
Just design.
construction portion of the towers would go up for bid, just so we all understand that.
But the amount that they get paid during said construction is,
The construction admin portion of the
Yes.
contract that was not approved by council.
Yes.
Right. And that we can talk about later, because we can talk about, do we want the people that design, I was talking about with this, with Brian about this today, do we want the people that design the water tower to be the construction admin? Or do we want it to be someone different? Obviously, there's some pros to having the same person that designed the tower be, administrate the construction of it, but we can tackle that later. Yes, ma'am?
Is it a given that we need water towers? I mean, if we buy water from Sioux Falls or hook up to MCW, do we still need water towers?
So that's a really good question.
Yes.
Believe it or not, that's one of the better questions that can be asked. The answer is yes. The water towers provide storage in case of a catastrophic event. So they provide storage and pressure without using electricity.
Gravity driven.
So it's a gravity-driven process, and I'm glad you asked that. Because I don't think,
Recommendations would be for us for a sustainable future.
right.
we need the
We
tower.
need
If we got rid of all of our wells and bought all of our water from Sioux Falls tomorrow, we still need water towers. I commend you for asking that, because I don't think a lot of people understand that, which is fine, but it needs to be, I want that to be clear.
I've always had and wondered.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
And just so I'm clear, those 2 towers, we have the funding already in place for those, correct?
We borrow the money.
We would borrow the money?
So we have 12 million from CCOG in loan money set aside for this already. I
Okay.
just got off the phone with CCOG about 20 minutes prior to arriving at this meeting.
Okay.
I've been on the phone with her for the past 2 weeks, but I just wanted, yes, we have some funding, and Brian can speak better to that. I'm not involved in this, but that was one of my questions.
Yeah, the 2 towers estimated cost of construction is about $8 million. So, and that $12 million was part of the 2013 study facility plan. There's other things in there that add up to the 12.
Other than the
Is that
towers.
both towers?
Yes,
Yes.
And the tower by the high school goes away?
correct. Eventually.
It'll find somebody
Someday.
to take it down faster than
What do you mean?
take down the other one.
We'll use it until
Until it's ready.
It's gone, until we don't need it.
the other towers are online.
Okay.
Then it
Figure out
goes.
what-
That's not a feasible tower to.
Because you can't use 3, you
That tower's
can't
not
have all
feasible
3
to
of them
keep
going at the same
It's a different
time, right?
elevation.
It's different
Yeah.
elevation.
So we're
So your
trying to
pressure's
set,
gonna be able to-
Yeah, it would be.
right now we have basically 4 pressure zones in town. The older part of town here is regulated by the water tower. And then we've got 3 booster stations, one out on Redwood Avenue, one out in the Bluffs, and then one in Stone Ridge, just as you go underneath the bridge, there's a, those regulate the pressure in the system. We want to move to the towers, and it's a very simple reason, gravity doesn't break, unlike pumps and controllers. So, you can't have a water tower at a different elevation than the 2 big ones, because we'd be overflowing it, it just won't work. You need the towers at the same elevations to set the pressure, but also if one tower is higher than the other, this one's setting pressure, and that water's just going to overflow the lower tower.
It's a simple hydraulics
Yes.
analysis,
There you
just to kind of put it in a layman's terms. If you have a hose with water in it and you lower one end and raise the other, water's going to come out the low end. It's
Lower.
going to come out just because of the pressure.
Now, to that, I have a question. John's not here tonight. I asked Brian this, and he wasn't sure. I want to find this out from John. So the distribution system, being separate from the towers, the distribution system is the system that's modeled by a computer model that gives us our pressures and our zones and et cetera. My question is, from my understanding, typically that is property of the city. And my question is that our property from Stockwell? And maybe you know, Ryan, do you know, is that?
As far as I'm aware, in that 2013 study, you guys have a copy of that model,
Okay,
as far as I'm aware.
I think so, I was gonna, I'll check.
okay, all right.
You want to see it? Told you, I brought it all.
And again, this question is for Jason and Kevin to start us off with. Does that need to be peer reviewed? I'm not saying the design of the towers, I'm saying the design of the distribution system.
Would that be normal practice?
Is that normal practice?
It would be, I would say, more normal if you wanted to update your distribution model.
Which is part of this whole plan, is that correct? We are updating the, right, like we talked about today, some of the looping, et cetera, that's all part of.
That's all included in the 13th study is the looping that needs to be done.
So yes, we are updating the system.
Yeah,
As far as updating the model,
that's what I'm saying is if you ask someone to peer review a model, all you're asking them to do is determine whether or not it was created in the standards that are expected of distribution models. You're not asking someone to necessarily critique whether or not something was correctly cited. Did you put an elevated storage tank in the right place? Did you assume certain pressures here or there? That's different. That's actually recalibrating the model. So I would say peer reviewing a model may not give you any additional information. If you're curious, that's probably an effort unto itself, is to recalibrate and update the model, because it was created in 2013. I assume it's been updated as pipes have been replaced, as the city has grown and you've built on. So that would be, I would say, my recommendation if you're going to go one way or another, is recalibration and update.
Recalibrate, rather than having an actual peer review done of the distribution system.
I don't know that just peer reviewing is going to tell you anything.
Okay.
Other than whether or not it was created.
As it was asked.
The curiousness.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything to add to that?
Not for that, but I have another question.
Yes.
What's the timetable for completion of the two towers?
Full construction, you mean?
Yeah.
It's they're probably we bid both of them just because of the amount of work involved, and if we could get both of them built at the same time, it's a year.
A year from now.
Yep. No, a year's total of construction.
Yeah, so from a
We
year,
haven't bid it yet.
from whenever.
From
they start
awarding the
those.
bid.
Yeah, so from now, how long are you
8
talking
months is
till they're up and done?
from
18
now.
months.
Yeah, from now, when are they done?
I mean, it depends on the final design. We'd probably, if we could bid it the end of this year, I would say probably the end of next year. Realistically.
Good question.
Is there, when you said if, is there any concern that that's not gonna be happening and starting?
I think the end of 2019
Yeah.
would be realistic.
For both to be built and online.
Yep.
Now, in addition to that, I've called around and talked to a few engineering firms about, do you peer review a water tower design? And the answer I got is typically no. Typically, that's pretty straightforward. Would you guys, again, this is questions that we're going to get asked by the community. Would you guys kind of speak to that and clarify that?
I think the construction's fairly straightforward. There's not a lot of innovation in water tank design.
Right.
Like you would
Right.
peer review it and say, no, I would recommend this, not that.
Because it's a legitimate question. You're spending $4 million on a tower. If we were to set, like we talked about, if we were to set the RFQ process and/or a peer review process, if we were to set that by dollar amount, well, that would fall under that dollar amount, I'm sure, because $4 million is a lot. But the answer is, no, it does not necessarily need to be peer reviewed, or at least that's the answer
I mean,
I've gotten.
you're not reviewing the design of the tower because they don't do it. You know,
Right.
what the contractor would get to bid is they would have recommendations on how the foundation is gonna be constructed, letting the contractor know whether it's gonna be driven pile or if it's gonna be a spread footing. The tower itself, whoever bids it, designs it, you're telling them the shape and you're telling them the piping and the overflow elevation.
Okay.
And so, I mean, the plan sheets themselves, there ain't much there, but
Okay.
you have a pretty thick performance spec that, you know, everything meets the requirements for them to design the towers.
So it's a construction company who actually designs it, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
the tank
they're setting the
manufacturer.
elevation. I mean,
Right, right.
You know, but the
They're
tank
laying the groundwork.
The tank manufacturer's designing it, they're welding it, so, you know, weld certifications, metals, I mean, all of that stuff is really on them. They turn in what we call shop drawings for all of that, and it's reviewed by whoever does the administration on them, so.
So does that make sense to everybody? Anybody have any questions with respect to that? So, back to, just for clarification, back to the water towers and to proceed with the design and getting bids for the 2 water towers. Are we all in agreement or disagreement that we want to move forward with that? I don't want to be the one to say it, I want someone to say it. I want someone to.
I'm in
In
agreement.
agreement, but we need to, what is our recommendation to the council then? Is it to go forth with the current contract they have
Yes.
and move forward? Or were you guys talking about
I would say
bidding out the 7 and 8 stuff that's in here?
that's part of the city's process already.
Yeah,
I don't know that we need to recommend that. I think just to, I think
proceed
what
with
he's
your
asking is
contract.
just proceed as the contract is laid out.
Yes.
Do we need to vote on this or just call it an agreement?
I think we probably should. All in favor of proceeding with,
So
or
I
did
think-
you have a question? Go ahead.
So I make a motion that we
Okay.
proceed, that the city proceed as they have already planned and
Second.
laid out, proceed with the water towers and get them done with.
And then I just want to clarify as far as the construction admin, that's still a decision that the council needs to make in moving forward with the construction admin.
That
And
we don't have to make tonight,
no,
just to be
This
clear.
is just
Yeah.
saying, move forward with
Yep.
Just
water
get it out
towers.
because any revisions or
Yeah.
that contract, I think it was from 2013, am I right? 14.
2015.
Oh, 15, jeez. So I would want to review the construction admin portion of the contract anyway prior to moving forward with that in the future. It's going to take some time to do.
So to
this.
answer your question, I think what the motion is that we proceed with the design and getting this project bid out, but the construction admin portion of this is still up in the air. We still need to decide on that as council, which we'll get to in a timely manner. I don't know when that'll occur,
Yeah.
but it's not something we need to tackle tonight. Okay?
Can I have
Yes,
a question before
yes.
we vote? I'm assuming that the piping, everything for these locations, you know, that's all, I mean, not exactly to the site, but you have piping that's close.
It'll have to be as a part
Right.
of the bid package. We'll have to
Yeah.
include the distribution or the transmission line from Raleigh. Where's it at? Is it at Harbor,
Redwood and Chestnut,
but
to the
yeah,
east one,
to
there's
the
already
east.
one there at that corner,
Yeah.
and then out
Harbor.
west.
It's just past Valley and Heritage.
Yeah.
Here.
So I mean, you're just extending it.
Yeah.
Okay.
We just crossed off storage. Check.
Check.
Efficiency.
Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, I just, wanted to make sure we didn't have another parallel line we're running to
Okay.
build the towers and then just for the cost.
Okay.
So,
I'm glad you guys are here because that stuff's out of a lot of our wheelhouse, so. Okay, so back to her motion.
The motion is whatever you just said.
Yeah.
Proceed with water tower design,
And bidding.
Make it
and
As planned,
as planned.
and bidding of the project, not including construction administration.
Probably just move forward with the current contract.
Current contract.
That's in place. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, very well. I will present that to council.
And that is short-term storage.
And without getting too technical, I just want to back up to your question that you had
It
earlier
is.
too, because
We're
you had
done with
asked
that part.
if connecting to a water source that's already being treated, if we would need those water towers. We talked about storage, and that storage is used for fire flow as well. It's not just used for
Watering it along.
domestic use and watering your yard, but having that in case of fires that we can basically put the fire out. But the other thing is too, is that with storage, the ability to have storage, we can fill those water towers in off-peak times so that we're using the water when we need it, but they can be filled at night, say, when people aren't actually using the water. So that's important for us to have, so that we're not just, during peak times, the demand isn't coming from that already treated water source. We can actually fill our water towers, if it is in fact Minnehaha rural water.
With treated water?
With treated water. And we can then pull from those water towers during our peak times, so that we're not creating this undue impact to if we did choose to have treated water already.
Yeah, it certainly helps offset those peaks.
Right.
So am I correct, Raleigh, am I correct to say that let's just imagine that the 2 water towers were in place tomorrow and we had that additional 2.5 million of storage. Would our water ban limit be adjusted because of that? Would we be able to?
No, I think we
Treatment
still
is-
need to work
We
with
still got
conservation.
bottlenecks with treatment.
No, what I'm saying
I
is
wouldn't say a ban, I would say your water restrictions.
restrictions.
Should
I would
stay.
still continue on.
No, I know that, but right now, we say if we're above, whatever it is, 1.8 for
Well,
3,
council could make the decision to ban all watering, that's what we did the last time,
right,
but that was a council decision.
Yeah.
There's trigger points that we have to meet, and when we meet or exceed that for so many days in a row, which is what the council had set up in previous years, that's when we said that we look at doing a ban. Well, now we've just gone to the point where it's straight water
Yeah.
restrictions.
Right.
And if I bring it to the council and say, hey, we use 2.1 million gallons in a day, well, you can only produce 2.2, that's where we kind of draw the line and say, hey, they're not following the restrictions. We kind of watch it as the ban or the restrictions are on, so.
okay, all right,
Just have to teach.
okay.
Yeah, the intent obviously would be that conservation would be well received and we would move forward.
Utilize more than
It's a
ever.
good question.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Silly question. But I don't know the answer, but I read an article, our last cold snap, a town in Iowa, their water tower froze. How does that not happen? If you were talking about their gravity, the water towers are gravity, how does the water tower not freeze?
Movement.
The water's moving out of
It's-
the water.
It's just always moving.
It's constantly,
There's also the technology, you can put mixers in them, it can be an air bubbler system, it can be, they don't recommend the air because the air will tend to take away your chlorination and stuff, so, but there's mixers that they can put in there which basically stirs that tank, just like taking a straw.
Did ours ever
Like
freeze?
that.
Did that. Ours does not have that.
It never happened.
And
But
it's
we're
never
bringing
frozen.
that fast enough that
But
that
yeah,
thing
I mean,
runs
it's
like
coming in.
Yeah.
at
And I change the levels too in the wintertime.
Okay.
I adjust levels so that it fills more frequently.
Okay.
and like they say, that,
Water's moving more frequently
I think-
into the tower.
I think it was Raleigh that told me a few months ago, our water tower has never froze.
Maybe around the outside edge, it's like, it's never froze out.
No.
Right.
Yeah, that way- yeah.
But that's a good question, and I know there's people in the community that have that same question.
Well, I mean,
Absolutely.
people read all sorts of things
Right.
everywhere, so
Yes,
why not ask
they
the question?
do.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's a good question. Thank you for asking. Okay, moving on, well 7, and if this is too large of a topic to tackle, we discussed last meeting about putting more testing into well 7 as far as where we want to draw the water out of, what level we want to draw the water out of. Do we accept it with the current pump tests that we did? Do we accept those levels and move forward, or do we want to try and refine that well? Because if so, we need to proceed with that testing.
Well, there's a very easy test that you could do that I'm sure that Geological Survey would let us use their electric logger, but just sending an E-log probe down and doing a gamma and fluid resistivity test will help pick out some hot spots.
Identify those layers, okay?
Let's do that.
I'm glad you're here tonight, Pat. Let's do that.
Let's do that.
You could have answered that yourself.
Well,
Volunteering.
Yeah, does that mean you're helping?
I mean, you can't get much cheaper than that, 'cause,
Okay,
How long did that take to do?
day, afternoon. I mean, they have to drive up here, they have to put a probe down, they have to
Less than a week?
bring it up.
So by the next meeting?
Yes.
By the next meeting, it happens like instantaneous. You get the reading from
Okay.
that, you can see the spikes.
So that would then give us information helpful
It
to,
would give you information
okay?
as to where some of the hot spots might be. We know
could
that
be
we have the driller's log, we know that the well is screened in the quartzite wash,
Yes.
which is lovely material to have a screen in, but it's in,
but
Radiant.
it's
the
radioactive,
quartzite wash.
right.
yeah.
Right.
So,
I don't know the extent to which the gamma's gonna pick up whether it would pick up the reading of
the hot spots,
that. Yeah.
that's what Dick was saying, that would be a great test for that.
The initial issue in the driller's log is, I haven't seen it with well 7, but it's probably it's gonna be fairly lumpy because they got down to the bottom. Oh, here you go, great sand.
It is,
Here, above that, the details are like, who cares? Because we knew where we were headed in the first place.
yeah,
And,
I mean, can you say that on here?
no, but I can imagine, it's
It's
the ultimate well
It's
log.
one of those driller's logs where you go, why on earth would anybody have put a well in this stuff?
Yeah.
Until you get down to that beautiful quartz sand and you go, oh,
But, how thick's the SR, the split rock?
yeah, the screen's from 343 to 420, 80-foot screen.
But above that, how far up does the split rock go? Couple hundred feet at least?
Blue clay, sand, I mean, how can you tell?
Yeah.
This
And
is.
what the log would do is, the driller's log, or the written log that Pat's got, will show, there's the surface, there's your hole, and your screen is way down here. It's a really nice sand. Above that is a whole bunch of the Split Rock Creek, the general unit that we call the Split Rock Creek, the details of which are kind of iffy and probably not much in the way of records. What the gamma log would do is lower it down the hole, and depending on how it responds, sometimes the line goes over here, all this sort of stuff. I don't even remember how it's laid out anymore, but anyway, suffice to say that, let's say this, excursions over here to the left are sand we get down with it. This one's way over here. Oh, okay, so that's a sand horizon that starts at about, this level and ends at this level. Some detail we don't necessarily have right now. And then you may go through a big chunk here where it's fairly tight grained and isn't going to be a resource. And so part of that discussion was, I think a couple of times back, was, maybe looking at saying, all right, well, maybe screening off that horizon might be a way of finding a decent amount of water that doesn't bring with it the, uranium-235 issues that show up down at the bottom. And the probes that the surveys got are designed, or the intent was to go down an open hole before anything was done to it. That's not the case here, and so I'm not sure self-potential is going to work, and resistivity is going to be a little dicey. But the gamma logger doesn't see that stuff. It tends to look right through the pipe. And so it can look through the pipe out at the formation around the outside. And so provided that, you get open access to the hole, and there was a discussion earlier this evening about trying to put a 6-inch camera down a 6-inch pipe. Well, hopefully, I don't know, how big's the pipe?
12-inch.
Okay, yeah, I don't think the
There's a gravelly sand unit from 180 to 281,
Yeah, so maybe,
With
you know,
the
maybe
water
there's
level.
something,
80
You know,
feet.
or maybe they'll say this is it. So maybe it's this pump here is an alternative sand and gravel unit.
Okay.
That at least could be identified better with the gamma log, the driller's log, what Pat's got in her hand. You know, that stuff that bit cut through, it's had to travel up through the hole, all that junk getting pumped around, and you hope that you think this is about where it's at when it comes out. Whereas the probe goes down, it's got a little ticker on there. We know exactly where the probe is, exactly when that signal comes out. And I suspect that with a little cajoling, we could get the geological survey staff to come up
And just
and chuck the probe in the hole.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, I think-
It might not pan out to be anything that will work,
Mhm.
but
Then
it
you'll
it
know.
will give us some
At least we'll know.
information. as a
Eliminate
possibility.
something.
So then are water samples taken at different levels and then,
Well,
testing done on that?
That would maybe be step two,
That'd be,
or an
If we can
additional
screen
step
that
at some
spot.
point, would be if the gamma log, you know, and the driller's log all point to, there's a really good target right here,
Okay.
you know, that's not this thing down here. This is all, it's almost a great target, it's just got cruddy water. There's an equally good target, we don't know what the water quality is like. And so it'd be a way then of trying to figure out, okay, can we figure out some way to get down here and get a water sample somehow? I'm not exactly sure how we have to do that, we'll lower Dick down.
Screen
Yeah,
Maybe
maybe you slap a quick observation well in there too.
Yeah. But
In order-
the first step would, theoretically, easy and relatively inexpensive to free, first step would be to get the survey, see if we get the survey out to.
I thought
Running
3 was a
catalog.
good price.
Pardon?
I thought 3 was a good price.
Okay, well, we'll have a conversation with our colleague and explain to them.
So-
That's what's gonna happen.
point being, this stuff is kind of on hold right now. If it's somewhat inexpensive and easy to do, I just feel like maybe we should move forward with some further testing. I would have liked to have done that
Oh, that's
a long time ago, but, yes, sir.
It's not necessarily a question, but I think as we move forward with this testing well 7, we've invested a lot of money already in this well, and a lot of testing, a lot of pump testing. We have a lot of results already. If we were going to compare, even though this is a good first step, if we were going to move forward with identifying what kind of water is in that column, it would be my suggestion that we do it similar to how we've already gotten tests from well 7. Otherwise, we're going to be sitting with some information. Well, did we pump it for 3 hours, or did we pump it for 23 hours, and what's the level of radium? Because we're going to look back and look at our existing information and say, well, can we compare this new information at this new elevation with what we were already testing? So I think we're trying to identify if we can reduce the radium levels that we've already tested, if in fact that well can be used still. So my suggestion would be that we would still test at the same parameters that we've already
Same rate.
tested.
Okay.
Just the different
Is that
spots
fair?
in it.
No, I think that's, I mean,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
you've got a well,
For sure.
you've run a bunch of tests, you've got a HMO, whatever that is, you know, I'm looking forward to that explanation. Which, and although it sounds like the original model or the original sort of test runs were done with a presumption of a certain level of radionuclides that may now be higher, so there's some implications. And so, yeah, you've gone a long ways down that road, and if it turns out that, hey, we can still do it, we can just, you know, crank up the sand volume or you know, crank it up to 11 and everything is fine, then, you know, maybe, yeah, going through the extra steps, you know, talking here, steps 2, 3, 4, and 5 of trying to sample the water somehow, do the rest of it, that may not be necessary. But, you know, as Pat said, I think right now, if we can get the survey up to just run the gamma log down there, at least get an idea of what's down there before the whole system kind of gets locked up and going.
gamma log it.
Pardon?
Let's gamma log it.
gamma log it.
And then just wait and see, but you've still got all this other stuff, you know, you've got the HMO treatment and the rest of it. If it can be scaled up, turned on, and operated without significant cost, why go through a whole new process if that still gets you where you need to be?
Yeah, you might gamma log it and find that that's hot, that's just as hot as the.
Right, yeah,
Right.
if it reads
Then
something.
then you know that the other option is not viable.
Okay, so for now, this is a relatively inexpensive test that will give us the next chapter of the book. Do we agree that we can move forward with this?
Can we go down to, all the way down with that gamma to compare at the very bottom sand level so that we can get the same
Yeah.
information through
Yeah,
the entire
you-
column?
You log the whole,
And
the whole log.
ideally, we want to run the log through the entire hole.
Yep.
So what our gamma is going, we're going to compare that elevation with what we are at right now, okay?
You'll get a view of the whole stratification. the whole
Okay.
strat column.
And so if they do the testing, do they just pull the screen up and pump it from 180, whatever that distance is? I mean, how does that work? The screen is movable inside the,
You have,
No,
We
no,
lower,
no.
you
You
close it
got
off.
You have to
you
close
got
it
a
off.
well in there, you
oh,
got
you
a
just
screen.
got to do.
Yeah, that's step 3 and 4.
Okay.
So if
Worry
you're,
about it.
Okay.
so if that 180 to 280 is beautiful and perfect and wonderful, yeah, then you're looking at reconstructing the well.
okay, all in favor of moving forward with this next step of testing of well 7? Say aye.
Aye.
Asking the survey to gamma log it.
Gamma log.
Since Pat
Do
said.
you
it's-
Well
want
7
to, you
gamma
want
log.
to gamma log well 7?
So is that something that we have to wait for the next council meeting to do, or can you guys just?
I'm hoping that you have
see
a
with it?
small enough budget that it could come right out of your regular funds, no?
If it's free, I'll pay for it.
It's free, I'll pay.
Yeah, it's free, we'll all chip in. It's free.
Good.
It would require just a letter from you or somebody to the survey,
Okay,
to Derek.
okay.
Just-
Well, what I was thinking is if we could not have to wait till the next council meeting. to
Right,
set it
I
up.
agree.
Okay, otherwise we
100%.
won't have it.
Right,
And actually, I think we've talked to Derek about this already.
So he has a
So-
heads up.
Let's do it tomorrow.
so we will get moving on that. Anybody opposed to that idea, that process?
So the survey will be working with you guys to figure out how best to get that well.
Just,
Okay.
so in this,
Okay, so are you gonna be contacting the Geological Society, or who's gonna be doing that? I just wanna make
It has
sure.
to come- The city
city
will
will
have
have
to put in
Okay.
a
Ben,
request.
if you just want to give us the contact information,
Yes.
we'll reach out to them.
and just to be clear, in future discussions with anybody, people in the public as well, we're moving forward with this test so that we can continue to research well 7 for the intent to use it short-term to have a water source that we can use fairly soon in the next 2 to 3 years.
To see if that's a possibility.
Right.
Again, possibility, exactly.
And it
Right.
may not be.
And it may not be. Right.
Which would then include further development of that well and potentially some future costs.
Right, right. Okay, with that being said, that pretty much wraps our agenda up. Angie, are you in charge of the update?
Yes, I'll do it.
Okay, I need 2 people to review. Kim
I like reviewing.
and one other? What's it? You were itching?
I can review if you need. one
Okay,
more.
Trudy and Kim.
When will the recording go up?
Christina says usually 2 days.
Yeah, usually within 2 days.
Christina's gone tomorrow, so probably Thursday is the earliest.
Thursday or Friday?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Geez, my first Friday off, and I'm gonna sit listening to this meeting.
So Angie, once you
Do you
get
want me to
that
make it
reviewed,
entertaining?
you need to submit that to, and you can ask Amanda how she's done it in the past, but you'll be submitting that to Paul
Is it
as
best in a
well.
Word document?
Yeah, that's best, and then I just put it into our template.
Okay.
Okay? And then Pat will provide that contact information to Brian for
Do you want the
Geological
update done
Society?
before I send it to
Yes.
you to begin with?
Jay might even have it.
The original version?
Well, I'll send it, I'll do it up, then have Kim and Trudy review it, and then I send it to you?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
Any other questions or concerns?
Well, Trudy had all of these questions and concerns that she
Okay.
had sent out. I don't know whether
Okay.
we're probably late on time, but I mean,
I
I
didn't
think these
necessarily
things.
mean that I needed answers on that. I just wanted to more or less get that out so that,
Well, I think
anyone
there's some
could-
very good talking
Some
points
valid
and
points,
that,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's things in here that, I mean, I think we're already doing and that have already been done that we want to make sure that are addressed if they're not, you know, and some of the other things. So I just want to make sure that, you know, we go over it and everybody gets a chance to look at it. Because, you know, there's some things in here about, you know, not having, you know, building without proper water sources. Do we need to stop building in plat reviews and all that kind of stuff? You know, so those are pretty important talking points and things that need to be discussed probably sooner rather than later. And some of the red flag options and things like that that are listed here, I mean, some of them have already been done and we've already talked about, so I don't know if we wanna take a few minutes and go at least over the red flag items, or,
I just want to clarify, you said in your email that you had been preparing this for some time.
Yeah,
So there was
these are-
probably some information
this
in
is
here.
not questions that I still necessarily have.
oh,
I
okay,
just wanted,
okay.
I've been writing notes to myself and just put them all in this format, in PDF format.
Yep. It's
So-
very good, and you know, there was a lot of good things in here, like I said, with the building permits and things like that, you know, we probably do need to talk about.
Can that wait until another meeting? I'm
up
sorry,
to you guys,
I
yeah.
gotta make chili.
Yeah,
I didn't get it till I got here, so I'd
Yeah, I
like
haven't
to
seen
read
Sure.
it
it.
yet either.
Sure.
so because she does have some very good points in here, can we all review this and we will discuss these and any other points that you want to bring up, please email them to me and we will discuss them at the next meeting? Can
Yeah,
we
I
do
can't
that?
have gotten them all. I mean, I'm sure.
Right,
there's
she's
others.
I mean, kudos to Judy for putting all this information together.
It's true.
True.
I'll
What'd I
answer
say?
just about-
Judy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I
All
forget
right.
Judy.
Kudos to Trudy. So yeah, any other input that anyone else has, please get it out there, get it to us, and we can discuss it at the next meeting. In addition to that, I have, I had Brian print off, I've had 2 different RFQs, RFPs emailed to me. I just want to be transparent with everyone and provide them to you guys. These are just kind of they'll give you a general idea of what an RFP is, what's included in it. And again, this is something that we can talk about at the next meeting because we'll have a draft put together by then. So maybe we can raise any major questions or concerns we have with that draft. This will help you kind of come up with some of those questions. So take that home and review it. And again, we'll get to Trudy and whoever else provides input or feedback as to what we're doing, what we need to accomplish. Email that to me and we'll get to that next meeting.
One last thing,
Yes, sir.
if it's not too late, I'd like to be on the water conservation
You
subcommittee.
got it.
Yes, I just printed the handout. I just printed the handout.
We'll let you on.
You know, last week.
It's way too late.
Right.
Okay, so Pat and Angie will co-chair the committee, and then I've got Kim and Trudy and Kevin on the Water Conservation Committee. You can, I think we should, I'm sure we
Kevin,
can
you're on the
always add
committee
to that
too?
if we need to. What's that?
I didn't have that down.
Yes.
I will work with Pat and then just kind of, because we're gonna have to meet opposite or separate
Yeah, you're gonna
from
have to
this,
come up with-
so
right.
I will email Pat and
Mhm.
you guys, and we'll just kind of come up with our own little meeting plan.
And we can have them at the chamber office, would be a great size space
Perfect. There you go.
too, so anytime, whenever we decide.
If you want them to be recorded, have them here. Otherwise, that's a beautiful facility over there. Have them in Kim's office.
And I will
That's a
just
great
toss
idea.
this out there, if we decide to do them over a supper hour, I'll cook.
Oh, we know you would.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm gonna
Sorry.
It's closed now.
Paul, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question about the RFPs again.
Yes.
I recognize this one. This one came from Tim, right?
Yes,
This-
the other one came from,
Where's this other one
from
from?
HDR.
Okay.
And for those of you who aren't familiar, HDR is a nationwide engineering firm.
So these are
with,
just
local
examples
offices.
of,
These are just examples, yes.
okay.
Yep. The reason I wanted to have these here is so that we can read through an RFP and/or RFQ and come up with some questions or ideas for our own RFP.
Yeah,
that
these
we
are examples,
create.
take a look at them. This is kind of what we're gonna be shipping out, and if anybody wants to look at a proposal that's submitted, stop in, we've got the proposals from 2013, if you wanna see what the companies are gonna spend 3 to 4 weeks on developing. If you wanna take a look at them, they're about Yates Nick and Rick Binder.
I saw it today.
And again, the proposals include projects that they've done in the past, and so it's examples. It's a resume, basically,
Mhm,
with the
CV,
team
yep.
and all.
On the conservation, do we already have anything from the city of, like, some things that you can do as a general public?
I got all the pamphlets that Sioux Falls brought. Is that what you mean?
Sioux Falls has they've got a great program.
Yeah.
You've got AWWA, American Water Works Association,
Yep.
has more information. I think Sioux Falls took theirs. What we've been talking about as a staff, we're not gonna recreate the rules, we're gonna steal everything. that we
Heck
can.
yeah.
Right.
Slay it.
KISS method.
Yep.
Heck yeah.
So,
These, don't take my thunder away, Don. The test results came in
Oh.
last week
Yes.
from the
Yes.
wells. So these are the radiological testing for the first page is the treated water, leaving the plant.
Okay,
So that's wells 1 and 6 going, and this is pre-HMO.
okay.
So this was done in October, the HMO plant went online early November. So the first page is wells 1 and 6 after running through our green sand without HMO. The second page is well number 3, which is the well that's behind the fuel building. And then that third page is well number 7,
and this is raw.
raw.
3 and 7 are both.
3 and 7 are raw.
And so none of these are through the HMO, right?
Correct. None of them are
Correct.
through the HMO process.
So we already have the radium-228, right?
What do you mean?
We already have it.
We do, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, right.
That was on the last bunch that we got the last time, right?
Well, no, these are from the October test. We've had test results before from like well number 7. Yes, we had the LBG study
Okay.
that had the radiological testing and then radium-226, 228 combined, and then Andros alpha.
These are the tests we've been waiting
These
for,
are the
Angie.
tests we've been waiting for from the
Okay.
state lab
Okay.
that we sent in October.
With that being said, again, I need people to speak up. Let me know what we want to tackle at our next meeting, because there's a lot of different directions we can go right now. Give me
Honestly,
some.
isn't it just wells and treatment in the short term that we need to discuss?
When do you anticipate the water rights gentlemen coming?
Again, if you want me to, if we want to do that at our next meeting, we can do that.
What's that?
You want me to try and arrange that?
Well, what I'm curious about is, I think that's good discussion.
Okay.
I definitely learned some stuff from that.
Okay.
But I was curious on what our quantity of water exists for. our
That is
rights now.
available.
Yeah.
So how about we do this? For the next meeting, I will try and have someone from the Water Rights District here, and also maybe we can do a tour of our plant.
Yeah.
Does that sound okay?
So
To kind of give us an
treatment
idea.
plant, water
Yeah.
treatment
Our
plant?
own treatment plant, yes. You know, another suggestion that was made that I think is a phenomenal idea is tour Sioux Falls' treatment plant. Just to have an understanding of what goes on out there. But
It's
for-
really interesting.
Yeah.
Paul wants to go.
Oh,
I've been there.
I've been on the sewer
Yeah, I've been
before.
there.
I've been in.
Been there. I might understand it better.
Yes. I don't want to, I don't remember the gal's name, but I haven't, I
It's either
need to
Gene
ask.
Goodman or Eric Grunland.
Jeannie,
Yes.
yeah,
Jane Goodman?
yeah.
Good poker face.
Well, no, I love Jane Goodman, I've known her for many, many years. and I-
Okay.
But, you know, they're coming from Pier, and if they're coming for a 20-minute, 30-minute meeting, I'm wondering if it would be more,
Angie will feed them.
I mean, she has a father that's in a care facility in Sioux Falls, so she
Okay.
might be doubling
Just
with
try to
that.
schedule it.
but
Okay.
perhaps it would be better to Zoom her in or something.
Yes.
Can we do a
You all-
Skype
Do you
meeting?
do Zoom?
Probably not here.
We couldn't?
We obviously have problems with recording stuff, and so we
we
would
could-
probably have to
we
have
could think
something
about
we
it.
would look into.
Sure, we could bring an iPad and just set it up.
Well, with a Skype, we just need a
Wi-Fi
internet connection.
connection.
We-
Yeah.
we
Do
can-
you have an internet connection here?
I've got, I mean, we'll use my hotspot if we need to. I don't see why we couldn't. If,
We'll try to figure it out if we can get on the big TV.
Zoom meetings are.
Well, you can,
Rowley's computer hooks up to that.
if you can, yeah, if you hook up your computer to that.
If
That's
Jane
what I
is
find out.
only coming down, if Jeannie's only coming down
For
for this,
this,
then it's
okay, I got you.
20
Thank you for
minute
bringing that up.
That's a good point.
It's a good point, and I will talk with her about that tomorrow. Yep.
Is there a lot to explain, or could it all just be on a fact sheet? I mean, I don't know.
Well, it'd be nice to be able to enter into a question and answer session with her as well. Let her,
Okay.
and like you say, maybe we only need 20 minutes of her time, and so this Zoom or Skype would be a great idea. So I'll talk with her about that. Yes, sir.
If I could, perhaps. Excuse me, boy, tiger. Seems to be a lot of interest in the tour, and maybe that would be the focus of next week. And then you talk to Jean tomorrow or this week and see if she can send along maybe some basic facts about water rights. Share with the group in 2 weeks' time, with the idea that that would serve as a foundation for questions on water rights activities. Not the next meeting, but the meeting after.
Okay.
Where Jean can be the focus of that activity, even if she's just Skyping.
Even if she's, okay. So what are your thoughts?
I
You
think
guys-
that's a
you guys
good
tell me.
idea.
You like it?
So do
Then we
a
have-
tour next, so that
Tour
we're
next
actually
week?
talking about
And
3
the fact
weeks,
sheet
right?
next
Because
week.
we're gonna go
Or 2 weeks.
February 6th, or are we going to actually go in the 5th week of January?
Well, we had established,
Every 2 weeks.
So then we're gonna be on 2nd and 4th Tuesdays and not 1st and 3rd Tuesdays. Just wanted to
I thought we had
clarify.
established that we were gonna do the,
1st and
yeah.
3rd,
Twice a month.
So
twice a
the,
month.
always the day after city council meetings? I mean, that
Yeah.
would be first and third.
Yes, it would.
Monday month. It's a good month, right?
They are.
They are good months.
I learned that too in 10 years.
Yes.
I love 5 months.
We get a skip week. It's called a skip week.
So yeah,
So
I just
first
wanted-
and third,
So let's clarify that, yeah.
First
next
and third
meeting.
Tuesdays.
Again, I'm leaving it up to you. What do you guys wanna do?
well, I think it's worth clarifying. I mean,
Absolutely.
I know
Me
there are
too.
people who can't come on the second Tuesdays. So if we need to stick with first and third, let's stick with first and third. Does that work for the majority?
Works for me.
Yeah.
I just
Okay.
didn't want people showing up in 2 weeks.
No,
Right.
it's a,
And we're going,
absolutely.
wait, I thought we were on 1st and
Absolutely.
3rd. so.
So what's the date?
Third Tuesday of each month.
Tuesday the 6th.
You might want to send an email out.
I will,
Yeah.
for those aren't
3
here.
days after my birthday, probably better bring birthday treats.
Okay, folks, well, we accomplished, I think we had, it was a good meeting. We accomplished some tasks that were needed, so I'm happy with our accomplishments tonight, and it was a good civil meeting. Thank you for coming. Anything else?
Some too.